Really.
This gentleman here.
In your opinion, what did you guys do differently as a band to stand the test of time? You know, coming up through the ranks and then standing the test of time.
What did we do differently? I don't know. We happened to have a unique combination of musicians and individual musicians that kind of made a music that cannot be cheated. And the music that Pete wrote, although it sounds very simple in some forms, is actually very classically based. It's not. It's a different structure. It's a different mathematical structure than most music. And he wrote things from a totally different perspective than most writers, and with incredible honesty. And I think when you're honest and you're writing from the interior about your dreams and your hopes, in the way that he had the ability to write, it's the two things. One, we're fucking good at doing it, and two, he wrote some of the best songs of the late 20th century. And I think he will go on writing even more great music. I really like our last album. I think there's some stuff on that that is really important. It doesn't matter whether it sells millions. That's not a gauge of whether it's a great album for me.
This gentleman over here.
With what you said about Keith Moon and his shape and everything, but you know, with this time in a career, with all you've been through, what was the status of the band going into the Who Are You album and the Kids Are Alright film?
Hanging in there, basically. We kind of got a bit shell-shocked with the success of Tommy, and Pete especially felt an incredible amount of pressure as the writer. Where do I go from here? And we'd already done, since Tommy, we did Live at Leeds. We'd done Who's Next, and those records at the time, Live at Leeds was quite a big hit. Who's Next at the time was not a huge success. It was one of those ones that kind of went in the charts and disappeared. Then we came out with Quadrophenia, which I think is a personally wonderful. Again, in England it was huge, but in America it kind of came and went. And then the huge success again of Tommy, which by then was becoming this kind of, almost felt like a monkey on our back, you know, like it was becoming a habit. And it pulled us back into that space, and we were desperately trying to break free of it. So we had it, this is why we had the year off. So all that is in the Who Are You album. You can hear Pete's kind of desperation in his writing. So we were a band struggling to stay together in musically, struggling to find a new direction. And our drum, we didn't realise it, but at the time our drummer was struggling to stay alive.
Let me ask a question. It's obvious watching this show, which I must have seen 100 times now, that John, each member of the band passes the sort of the energy ball from one to the other, but John has astounding moments. Is there anything you'd like to say about John's playing and his originality?
Well, to me, he was one of the most original, you know, electric guitar bass players of them all. When you hear the kind of funk thing that kind of happened in the late 70s, John was doing that in the 60s. You know, he was, I don't know, he was just extraordinary. He was so melodic. And there was something strange about Who music as well, that it was always driven by the vocal. Most rock and roll, the vocal lays behind the backbeat. If you notice the way Pete writes, the vocal is always it takes an awful lot of energy. And that's what I mean by you can't cheat it, because it kind of then gets sloppy. And if we ever get sloppy, I'm going to stop.
I know we've got to rest your voice, so let's do two more questions. One from the gentleman at the back here.
Yes, Mr. Daltrey, great great music through the many years. It's obvious from your concerts you're in very great shape. What's a Roger Daltrey diet, and what do you do to keep in shape?
There's a book.
I always put it down shagging a lot, you know. My wife gets very embarrassed about that. I love her.
One more, you shut.
Roger, you said that when you first approached John Entwistle to join your band, that you told him you had gigs, but that you were lying. And I was wondering...
I told him we were getting paid for gigs. You know, we all had gigs, but they were all freebies. You know. But I said, you getting paid? He said, no. You know, so I said, we are. And I was lying. But he came and we just immediately hit together. We had a passion about the drive of the music. And then when Pete joined, he had the same thing. John and Pete had played together in a trad band, which was traditional kind of New Orleans trad. So they had played together, but when Pete joined as our rhythm guitarist, he had the same energy, and that worked. And then when Keith Moon finally turned up on the front of our stage and said, well, let me have a go, the final piece of the jigsaw came together. And it really was just like someone had fired up a rocket. Something came from outer space. It was really a weird feeling. We just knew then that this was something very special. And when you look at, if you've seen Amazing Journey, and you look at the early footage, which was shot in 1964, the high number stuff. God, if you could find a band like that now, you'd sign them up immediately, wouldn't you? Even today.
So, Roger, I know we want to save your voice for shows ahead.
Yeah, I've got to go to Japan tomorrow, and we've got a show. We lose a day in time, and we've got a show the next day after we arrive, and it's a brutal time change. So if you don't mind, I'm going to kiss you all goodnight. Go and have something to eat. Because it's the hardest thing in the world is for a singer to have a meal in the daytime.
So, Roger, I just wanted to thank two people that worked on this project here in the audience, Mark Stepp, the editor, and Paul Clay, who designed the sound. It was an astonishing achievement to pull this material out.
I hear you've done a great job on this, you guys. I don't watch it, but I hope you all enjoy it. I'm pissing off, Nigel. I'm leaving all this technical stuff to you. I'm going to dinner. Good night, all.
Roger Daltrey, thank you very much. Now you'll all walk out of me. And I'd like to also acknowledge Robert Rosenberg, who's worked with Who since 1978, who's helped find this material. Did anybody want to ask any technical questions for 2 minutes when we've got the show on? The negatives were in excellent condition. They were stored in Who's archives. They were 35 millimeters. The film was shot with 6 cameras and 35 mil. And the sound was excellent as well. You had a question? Yeah. There are other shows in the archives, but this is in high def. We hope you enjoy it and hope you all buy the DVD. In fact, 2 copies. Thank you so much for coming.